Alrighty, everybody. So we are now into the Disney era of Star Wars films because the first seven pieces of this series have all been dedicated to the Lucasfilm era pre-acquisition by Disney. But with this being the Force Awakens episode, we are now firmly, and for the next and the subsequent four sessions, discussing the Disney era of Lucasfilm movies. So the Force Awakens. All right. Are we ready to get going? Or I should say, I didn't even plan this. Are we ready to get rolling? All right. Was that too corny? Was that too intensely corny? All right. We're gonna roll with it. Okay. So here we screen share go. All right. Gotta pop up. Okay. So this one, I had a little fun with this one. I threw more GIFs in, threw more YouTube videos in, instead of simply putting the text in this one, which is an interesting model, I think, for source sheets going forward. And like all the first seven sessions, this too, they're all on Safaria. They are available. And also just another context to the series. Again, this is not everything there is to know Jewishly about all the movies. This is really, I'm focusing on biblical and rabbinic related text to different scenes in the movies, but there are probably other scenes that people could go with that I didn't touch upon. There are probably other biblical and rabbinic texts that I didn't touch upon. And then of course, if people want to do, this is a really interesting idea, a totally skip the biblical and rabbinic stuff and just focus, let's say, on Maimonides. Like, what does Maimonides say about these sorts of situations, or Kabbalistic texts? So there are a million different ways in which someone could take this Star Wars series. So, all right, back to The Force Awakens. Family origins, top of the movie, we have the scene between Loras and Tekka and Kylo Ren. I know where you come from. Before you call yourself Kylo Ren says something. Loras and Tekka says, the First Order rose from the dark side. You did not. I'll show you the dark side. You may try, but you cannot deny the truth that is your family. So two texts that came to my mind, there are probably plenty of other, certainly biblical texts. Even just the book of Genesis is just chock full of genealogical stuff, and the book of Chronicles. And there's probably lots and lots of rabbinic texts, but here are two quick ones that come to mind. The first is at the very beginning of the fourth chapter of Kedushin in the Mishnah, of 10 genealogical classes went up from Babylonia. And here are these different classes. And then, of course, it talks about which groups can marry into others and obviously which can't, which is an interesting sense of, various lineage and genealogy of who can do what. This is a very different one. This is a text that typically pops up in conversations around theodicy, of why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. But I thought that this is just a fun text to just throw in here from the Babylonian Talmud. It's from Brachot 7a. So this is Rabbi Yochanan, who is a 3rd century rabbi quoting a late 2nd century rabbi, Rabbi Yossi. And he says, so Rabbi Yochanan quoting from Rabbi Yossi says, Moses requested 3 things from the Holy, blessed be he, all of which were granted to him. So the third was he requested that the ways that God conducts the world be revealed to him, and it was granted. So he said before him, Master of the universe, why is it that the righteous prosper, the righteous suffer, the wicked prosper, and the wicked suffer? He said to Moses, the righteous who prospers is a righteous son of a righteous, is a righteous person who's the son of a righteous. The righteous who suffers is a righteous whose father was wicked. And the wicked who prospers is wicked, but their father was righteous. And the wicked who suffers is a wicked person, son of a wicked person. All right, this is kind of interesting. It's kind of funny if you actually plug it into the Kylo Ren piece of like, he's a wicked person who's the son of a good person, kind of. But if you want to think about it in the Loras and Tekka sort of way, I just thought that was an interesting text. It's typically used in more theodicy matters, but I thought it'd be fun to just throw this in here. Okay. There are probably other things, just a sense of knowing, and going back to Loras and Tekka, of not denying the truth that is your family. Of, look, a lot of, certainly it's hard to avoid knowing like the family stuff. I mean, a lot of the Torah, certainly the book of Genesis, book of Exodus, is a lot about family, of lineage stuff, knowing where someone comes from. It's a very big piece, really, in Jewish text and Jewish history. And that's an interesting thing that Laura Santeca sort of brings up, and Kylo Ren really wants to have almost nothing to do with family, almost, because later in the movie, which I don't put in here, we know who his grandfather is, and he sort of wants to follow after in his grandfather's, we can call it footsteps, we can call it shield steps, if that's a thing, but he wants to, you know, follow in Darth Vader's. Okay, so we have eating here, and we have the scene where, of course, Rey comes back after having sold some or bartered some things with Unker Plutt, and she gets some foods, or at least little, I don't know, instant food, as it were, and she puts them in, she eats them. I really wanted to do something interesting here, but here are two texts that come to my mind from rabbinic literature. One is from the Babylonian Talmud Kedushin 40b, and this is a text from the 2nd century of the Common Era, which is, one who eats in the marketplace is comparable to a dog, and some say is disqualified from bearing witness. Here, look, Rey could have just eaten her food right there at Ne'ima Outpost, part of the marketplace. But here she goes back to her fallen AT-AT, and she does her eating thing. So that's a good thing. I have a really interesting text here from the Tosefta, which is also roughly 2nd century of the Common Era, which says She'ein nashoseihem shel anim shosos yain, which is that the wives of poor men don't drink wine, which I think is more of a socioeconomic claim than necessarily just a, I don't know, personal palate preference sort of thing. That typically the poor people don't necessarily have as much financial capability to purchase wine. Okay, so we're going to do one quick little thing more, and then we'll actually, you know what? Are there any questions so far? How are we doing? Any questions? I've been running so far. We good? This is pretty straightforward so far. Awesome. Okay. Okay, so this was an interesting scene of Finn, going through the desert. And he, by the way, he'd been running, ever since he got Poe out of being chained up in the sort of the First Order prison, and they got into I think it was a Special Forces TIE fighter, and then they crashed, and he'd been going through the desert. He took off his First Order Stormtrooper armor, and this is the first sight of water he's seen, and he runs towards it. It just happens to be a half a boar. It's also there. It's disgusting even to him. So I didn't find necessarily a rabbinic text that talked about drinking water from an animal's trough, like a water trough, but I did find something that was in the ballpark, which is Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who is a 3rd century rabbi, and he says, and this is a midrash, when the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Adam, thorns also and thistles shall bring forth you. In Genesis, Adam's eyes streamed with tears. He said before him, Master of the universe, will my donkey and I eat from the same trough? God said to him, in the sweat of your face shall you eat bread. His mind was settled. So it's not drinking trough, but it's a feeding trough. It's close enough. But the idea is that it's disgusting to be drinking the same water, and that's what Finn experiences here, that it's a disgusting experience to drink from an animal's water, or for that matter, feeding trough. How are we doing so far? Interesting stuff. All right, cool. All right, let's dip back into it. Okay, lying. So for those who've been in the series, you know where I'm going to go with the lying texts. For those less familiar, I'm going to go through them again, which is we have, Rey asks, oh, so you're with the Resistance? Obviously, yes, I am. I'm with the Resistance, yeah. So this is still in the Ne'ima Outpost. And so, Finn is fresh out of the First Order. He is on the run, but happy to distance himself from the First Order. So it's a clear lie. So the interesting thing is we have these notions in our tradition. There's no outright prohibition in the Torah against lying, we do have, we do have this, which is close. From a false thing, keep your distance. Okay, so stay far away from something of falsehood. The next, the real problem is witnesses who give false testimony. Now that is a bridge too far, but for this, stay away from a false matter. Now we do value and venerate truth in our tradition. One instance, of course, is right here in Pirkei Avot. We have Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who's I think he's 3rd century. I'm sorry, 2nd century. And he says, on 3 things does the world stand: on justice, on truth, and peace. So truth is highly significant. But as we see from this very fascinating text, there is some wiggle room. We have this Baraita, we have an early rabbinic text from Ketubot 16b. Now it involves these 2 famous mid-1st century academies, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. And the sages taught Keitza Meraktin Lifnei Hakala. How do we dance in front of the bride at her wedding? So Beit Shammai says, the bride as she is. Just tell it as it is. You call it as you see it. Beit Hillel says, no, you always say. So for Beit Hillel, or Beit Shammai, it's a very subjective, just depends how she is. So Beit Hillel says, no, we're going with an objective, flat response all the time. You say, Kala Na'ev Chasuda. She's really beautiful. She's very nice. That's it. All the time, just say, this is your special day. You're really lovely, and be done with it. So Beit Shammai has a real big issue with this. How can you just flat out say everybody's pretty at her wedding? So they say, what if she's lame or blind? You say, oh yeah, you're fair and attractive. But clearly you got issues. And the Torah says, keep far from a false matter. So Beit Hillel says to Beit Shammai, okay, fine. If we take the logic of your statement, one who goes to the market, buys an inferior product, do we praise it, or do we say, yeah, that's a pretty poor purchase? No, you should praise it, and they should, in their eyes, they would appreciate it. So from here, the sages said a person's disposition should be always empathetic with mankind. Le'olam tehei da'ato shel adam mu'arevet im habriyot. Okay, it's very nice. Piece from Beit Hillel that you don't always have to just be flat out honest. You can just say that's a really nice, bride or car or house. Yeah, it's really awesome, even if you don't like it. They were happy enough to put in the purchase. All right. Okay. So anger. We have the scene here. I jiffed this up. Oh, Stevie's got a question. Yeah, what's up? Stevie.
Well, just a thought that Finn is also right. He's not just lying, but it's a lie that winds up coming true.
Yeah.
And so that made me think of the Akedah of Abraham sacrificing Isaac and saying God will provide the ram. And I'm sure there's other examples, but that's what jumped out at me.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good parallel, Abraham saying, we'll see.
It seems to be intended as a lie, but it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's good. Well put. All right. So we have this scene about anger. Kylo Ren, in this, they lose I think it's Rey. Is that it? I don't remember what it is, but they lose Rey somehow or something, and Kylo Ren is furious, and he just slashes up the entire room, basically. I'm curious. We have this text. I know we've discussed it in previous sessions of one who. So this is from Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer Mashum Chilfa Bar Igra Masha Amar Mashum Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. So this is going back probably to the 1st century, this Common Era. But one who rends his garments in anger, breaks his vessels in anger, scatters his money in his anger, should be like an idol worshiper in your eyes. That is the crafting of all information, all these different things. Okay, it's clear. Kylo Ren here is not on the fence as far as morality goes. This is clearly a bad sort of situation for him. He should, this is not presented as valorous behavior. This is definitely something that is not good. He's definitely not in control of himself, and that's, as we see later, I mean, he even that sort of balances. He's definitely trying, he's aspiring to the dark side, as it were. Okay. Of course, if there are other texts out there that also talk about losing control of oneself and anger, that'd be great. Of course, I was also kind of thinking of the beginning of the 4th chapter in Avot, where Ben Zoma says, Ezehu Gibor, who is one who's mighty, who is one who's a warrior, Hakovish es Yitzro, so one who conquers their sort of their inclination or whatever. So, here clearly Kylo Ren is not. He's not really fully in control of himself. He's not as strong as he sort of makes it out to be, as it were. We wanted to take that Ben Zoma text.
But it also works with Ben Sorero More from the drawing a fence around it. You don't know what he's going to grow up to be, so kill the kid, right? And this one is, well, he's obviously out of control. His Yetzer Hara is yucky, and he's just breaking stuff today, but next week he's going to worship idols. It's predicting future as well.
Yeah. 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 Actually, that's a really interesting thing. Thank you for bringing that up, Edie, because I am actually really tempted, and speaking of Kylo Ren, tempted to bring that up for The Last Jedi. We have a sort of a Rashomonic like discussion. I know I'm thinking ahead, but stay with me. A Rashomonic where we have 3 different scenes of the Kylo Ren Luke Skywalker interaction, right? And that Luke Skywalker, at least in one of the sort of versions of the Rashomon, sort of splitting up, is Kylo Ren's evil. Like, he's horrible, he's terrible. Like, I should just kill him before he wreaks evil havoc throughout the the universe. Ben Sora Moore has been on my mind over the weekend.
How are your kids doing? Sorry. Anyway,
my kids have been fine. I've just been thinking about it as far as the wine consumption, the wine and the meat.
Because they're alkies. But the whole point is, it's he's gonna do something bad, so go ahead and kill him now.
Yeah. Cut him off early. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, that was not where I wanted to go. Let's see. Here we are. Okay. Payment of loan. All right. We have this really fascinating scene. Balatik from the Guavian Death Gang. So the Guavian Death Gang shows up on Han and Chewie's ship, and Han says, Balatik, what's the problem? And Balatik says, the problem is we loaned you $50,000 for this job. I heard you offered $50,000 from the Contra Club. And you can't trust those little freaks. How long have we known each other? The question is, how much longer will we know each other? Not long. We want our money back now. You think, honey, whatever. We have this, obviously, I never made a deal with Contra Club. Tell that to Contra Club, which is just one of the best lines of the movie. And then, whatever. Basically, Han's trying to skip out on repayment of these 2 $50,000 credit loans. And I am not an expert when it comes to repayment of loans in either biblical or rabbinic texts. There is a lot. I mean, there's definitely a lot about it. One text that kind of comes up, although this is not really what I was looking for, a text I would love to see in rabbinic literature is along the lines of sort of demanding payment or figuring out when a particular loan is meant to be repaid. But one text I did find also in the Babylonian Talmud is Rav Dimi. So I'm pretty sure he's a 3rd century rabbi, but Ki ata Rav Dimi. So when Rav Dimi came from Israel to Babylonia, he said, whence is it one who is owed 100 dinars by another and knows that the borrower does not have the funds to repay him, it is prohibited for him to pass in front of him. And then you use this verse, lo tia lo kenosha. So, I mean, it's pretty clear that Balatik, like both the Guavian Death Gang and Contra Club, they want their money. But, Han's in a tough situation. He's expecting he'll have the money once he delivers the Raftars to whichever king it was that he owes. I don't remember. I'm sorry, my Force Awakens trivia is a little low. Whichever king hired Han Solo to deliver these Wrath Stars. But yeah, does anybody know of any loan texts? No? All right, cool. Couldn't hurt to ask about loan texts. So, all right, facing tests. So Snoke says there's something more. The droid we seek is aboard the Millennium Falcon in the hands of your father, Han Solo. And Kylo Ren says, he means nothing to me. Even you, master of the Knights of Ren, who we barely see in any of the movies, have never faced such a test. By the grace of your training, I will not be seduced. We shall see. So the idea of facing tests, I immediately thought of, and there could be other texts, but this Mishnah from Pirkei Avot, that there were 10 trials that Abraham, our father, was tested with, and he succeeded. He passed all 10 of them. And to Lahodia Kama Chibato Shel Avram Avinu Alav Hashem, to make known how great was the love of Abraham our father, peace be upon him. So that Abraham had 10 tests. It's interesting that Snoke used that language of such a test, which also to some degree implies that Snoke has experienced Kylo Ren facing other tests, and that this is of course just another test as well of facing his father. I don't have a good text for this, but this was such a good scene to leave in of Han when Rey and Finn are asking like, what's the deal with the Jedi and all that stuff, and Han says there's a lot of rumors, stories. The people who knew him the best think he went looking for the first Jedi temple. The Jedi were real. I used to wonder that myself. Thought it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo, magical power holding together good, evil, the dark side, and the like. Crazy thing is, it's true. The Force, the Jedi, all of it, it's true. So I don't have I'm not really sure what to say about this as far as a good rabbinic text or biblical text to pull that together. But it was just too fascinating of a dialogue for me to pull it out. Any thoughts on that? Eve, anything to connect it with? Hold on. I'll get it later, okay? All right, sun came around. Okay, all right, should we move on to the next set of texts? By the way, should I drop in the link to the text, or is this fine with everybody? Also, the link to the text on Safari are also on the Facebook page. They're not secret, they're not proprietary, they're for everybody. We're good? Fun stuff, okay. Ooh, okay, so good versus evil. So Maz, there's this scene when they get to Maz Kanata's castle, and there's a conversation, and Rey hears Maz say something about the fight, and so she asks, what fight? Maz says, the only fight, the fight against the dark side. Through the ages, I've seen evil take many forms, the Sith, the Empire. Today, it's the First Order. Their shadows spreading across the galaxy. We must face them, fight them, all of us. As far as fighting, there's no, I don't have any like, as far as I know in biblical and rabbinic text, there's no necessarily like language of fighting good versus evil. There's obviously a language of doing good and not sticking around evil. I have two things to say. One is these couple of biblical texts I brought here, and the second thing has to do with afterwards, okay? So the first is Isaiah 5:20. Those who call evil good and good evil, who present darkness as light and light as darkness, who present bitter as sweet and sweet as bitter. This is okay. So we get this juxtaposition of good, bad, light, evil, which also, by the way, is a nice tie into Star Wars writ large as far as the light side, the dark side, good, evil. Like this is a really great text, I think, for anybody doing even if you were to just do a one-off Star Wars thing, this would be a great text. This one biblical verse is it's a really great encapsulation of sort of the meta Star Wars stuff going on. That's really neat. I think that's a fascinating text right there from Tanakh, from the Bible. We also have, which I think is a definitely much more famous verse, this Micha verse than the Isaiah verse, He has told you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, only to do justice and to love goodness and to walk modestly with God. So that is kind of as far as the Higid Lecha Adam Ma Tov. God, God's told you what's good. I think that, but again, that's not necessarily a fighting, like fight evil, like we need to combat it. Okay. Now that I brought,
ought to be stuff though between Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov.
okay, so that's fair.
I haven't looked at that. I just actually did a quick, but I'm like, don't want to. That's where I think would be an interesting thing to go because the internal part of it.
Right. They're probably, I would believe that. So I'm going to kind of go along those lines to get to my second point, which is to say that the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara stuff are late antiquity ideas, right? And what else was in late antiquity was the New Testament. So now I'm not trying to compare the New Testament to the Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov stuff, but I think that the New Testament does pick up more on this fighting evil with good, taking up the fight of the good versus the evil. Because when I did some Googling around of like fighting good and evil, like what's, where's some good biblical text for this? And I found a lot of New Testament stuff.
Crusades to mind. Let's just not do that one.
What? The Crusades, yeah, brings the Crusades to mind. Right, so it's not really in our textual tradition to really focus on necessarily the fighting aspect as much as doing good and not doing evil. That's more of our tradition, and I think that's more of a New Testament idea of the fighting, like fighting in the dark and going to the light, all that stuff. But it pulls, I think, to some degree from that Isaiah text. Okay. All right. Any thoughts, questions, comments, queries, concerns about any of that?
Yeah, I had a little something.
Jason and Vera.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to go first?
No, you go first. Go.
Okay. I just was thinking that the rabbis would never, I don't think they would ever really say to like, they might say subdue evil. I don't know if they would ever say like fight it and bring it down. Because like the whole point is that we have like free choice. And if you like destroy all evil, then we wouldn't have the free choice to do good if you don't only be doing good. And the whole with like that, it's like there has to be evil. We can't fight and kill it, but we can subdue it and go to good.
Right. Which reminds me of that midrash about the first temple, that during the first temple times, they tried to get rid of the Yetzer Hara. And what did they end up? So the problem was that, it had its positive consequences, but also there were no eggs being hatched. There were no eggs being laid. There was a lack of productivity in the world. So then all they do is they like only partially, they allow some of it back in, but some of it not. So yeah, there's an interesting sense amongst the rabbis that the Yetzer Hara does have a utility, a positive utility for the world, but it's not altogether good, right? Okay, Vera.
Yeah, I was just going to say that a text that comes to mind about like, choosing good over evil, right, is as in Deuteronomy 30, right, where, God says, I've put before you life and death and blessing and curse, right, choose life so that you can live, right? I feel like that's very comparable to this of like, here's the good and the evil, like not necessarily fight the evil, but like you have to which one to choose. I feel like that's very like Star Wars. It works well with Star Wars things in general. Also, this sort of tension of like, here's the good and the evil in front of me, like which one do I listen to?
Right, the choices are in front of you. Go with the good. That's good. Thank you, Vera. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, any others? Ready to dive back into the sources? Okay. All right, got a little video here. I'm not going to play it, but the vision is, oh, yeah, prophetic vision. All right, so we have Rey gets this prophetic vision. She gets to Luke Skywalker's first lightsaber that he drops during at Bespin in Cloud City, and then she touches it, has this vision. We have prophetic visions ourselves. I didn't quote any of them, but Isaiah, I think Isaiah has one. There's some other ones in the later prophets, more so than the earlier prophets. They're visions. One text that could be used here is it's also in the Babylonian Talmud of that when I think when the second temple was destroyed, then prophecy, as the text goes, like prophecy was given to idiots and children. So prophecy really wasn't a reality, and I've heard different explanations. One is just, you know, they aren't doing it, but also that the idea of, this is a really political take of, you know, under, I think it was the Romans who in the first century were the sort of the political overlords, that if you were to have prophetic visions, that it could be threatening to the political overlords, as it were. So in any event, prophetic visions were a thing. I don't know if they were necessarily in the sense of touching something and then having this prophecy, but yeah. So that's the prophetic visions. I didn't toss those in, but definitely they should be. That would be good there. One thing I didn't have a text for was when they land on Starkiller Base, and there's this conversation between so Han Solo's asking Finn, "Hey, what'd you do here at Starkiller Base? Like, what do we need to do?" He says, "Well, I was in sanitation. I'm just here to get Rey. Like, I'm not really here to like necessarily blow this place up." And he says, "You know, how are we going to do this?" And Finn says, "Solo, we'll figure it out. We'll use the Force." That's not how the Force works. Okay, so that clearly is the best line in the movie, in my humble opinion. I don't have a good, this is too good not to put in here. That's not how the Force works. There's probably, I mean, here's what comes to my mind. I'll tell you which is, and again, there's probably lots of different relevant biblical or rabbinic texts, but the thing that comes to my mind is, I think earlier in that dialogue they talked about magic, and yeah, but anyway, I think magic, the notion of magic as opposed to, is like some sort of shortcut to getting things done in the world. And I think that would be an interesting connection to talk about magic, right? It's kind of, you know, it's a power in the universe, and it's not a great text. It's not a great connection of magic of sort of shortcutting things. Aside from that, I mean, there are ways to do things and there are ways not to do things, and there are assumptions about how things and the way things in the world work, and there's misunderstandings of them, and that's how this plays into it. Does anybody know of any good connections, textual or otherwise, for this? I'm struggling with this one. It was just too good of a line to not include. It was like really cool and catchy. All right, moving right along. Okay, father, son. We have Han Solo's death scene, tragic, but yet semi-obvious what happened. I don't know. It's sad. It's father, son. It's like super close on the line of almost coming to kibbud av v'em, of like respecting your, you know, parents. Here, there is a moment in this scene, if you are watching it, that Kylo starts off the scene with his mask on, and Han says, "Take it off so I can," and then Kylo says, "What do you think you're going to see?" He says, "I'm going to see the face of my son." And he does, actually. Kylo Ren removes his mask, and he does, in a sense of deference to his father, remove his mask or his helmet. And after that, even though that's a nice trend in this interaction, of course, it goes in a very different direction. Sorry. The opposite of kibbud av v'em. I don't know if there's a good like father killing story. I don't think we have a good father killing thing in Bible or rabbinic stuff.
Some of King David's sons try to kill him.
Okay. All right.
They don't succeed, but they try.
They do try. I was going to go in a very different direction, talking about Oedipus. That's not our tradition. So, but yeah, King. All right, that's nice. King David's sons. Yep. Gets his hair caught on the tree, all that good stuff. Okay. Thanks, Stevie. All right. Okay, we're at our last section, which is getting a teacher. And getting a teacher, this is, I'm going to take from two separate scenes, but it's the same theme, which is while they are engaged in lightsaber duel on Starkiller base, Kylo Ren says, you need a teacher. I can show you the ways of the Force, because Rey is clearly untaught. She's a raw Force user. And Kylo Ren says, I can teach you. And then we have, I'm just gonna play it just because, or I'll just have it in the background. But Rey literally goes to Ahch-To, or Ahch-To, however you want to pronounce it. She's, going literally out of the way, out of wherever. And by the way, I was tempted this whole time to be playing Rey's theme song this entire session, because that is just one of the best, I think, top 10 Star Wars songs ever, and really is a great piece of this movie, Rey's theme. And we do have, so Pirkei Avot 1:6, and I know I've mentioned this before, the idea of master student is big in Star Wars, and it plays a part here too. Yoshua ben Prachia, who's, I don't know when he lived. I don't know, does anybody know? Is he in the BCE? Is he before the Common Era? I'm pretty sure he's probably in the either 1st or 2nd century BCE, but he goes back. But one of the things he says is, Aseh lecha Rav, make for yourself a master, make for yourself a teacher. And certainly in this scene, so yes, Kylo Ren does abjure her to get a teacher, and yet here she is, and she's literally going up on, what is this? It's the island of Ahch-To in Star Wars, but it's a real place off the west coast of Ireland, and it's a beast to get up. It's a lot of hiking, as you can see Rey is doing. And this is really a making, right? Aseh lecha Rav, you should make for yourself a teacher, and she's really making that effort to ascend this far, far away island. And certainly the planet of Ahch-To in general is distant. And here she is making Luke her teach. I mean, not that he's accepted it, as we see at the very beginning of The Last Jedi, where he takes the lightsaber and tosses it almost entirely off the cliff into the ocean. But it's, Rian Johnson takes us in a very different direction. But for J.J. Abrams, one of the Ashkenazi directors of Star Wars films, he at least has some respect for the lightsaber, which we see come back in The Rise of Skywalker, where they seem to destroy The Last Jedi in its storytelling. But yeah, it's a nice little, making for yourself a master. Okay. Great scene. All right. Okay, Stevie, what do you got?
Yeah, I thought of one for the Force doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Elijah has his showdown with the prophets of Baal, he like at one point is making fun of them, like, try praying louder.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the whole scene, but I think there's like a fair amount of that kind of like your sacrifice isn't working, and like, yeah.
Which kind of reminds me also of Korach, right? Like all the time, Korach's like, why are you lifting yourself up above us? And Moshe and Aaron are saying, we didn't pick this. Like, this is what God chose. And like, all right, fine, let's meet at noon at the OK Corral. We'll meet up in the morning, and we'll see who God picks, right? It reminds me of sort of like God will decide. That's good.
Yeah, but the like, here, try this, and it doesn't work, sort of rhetoric is the.
That's good. Thank you, Stevie. Edie, do you have something?
No.
Oh.
I was trying to come up with something. I was like, it doesn't work. No.
I can tell when people take themselves off mute. Oh, they got something.
I was like, no.
The telltale sign. Okay, so next week, and Stephanie, you ready for this? Next week is? What's next week?
Jedi.
What?
The Last Jedi.
2 weeks from now. What's next week?
Wait, I don't know what I thought you were going in.
Release order.
Oh, so is it Rogue One next week?
Yeah, Rogue One's next week.
Okay, that super doesn't work for me because
Yeah.
we're loading our pod next weekend.
I'll record it.
So I don't know. I mean, we might be able to get on because
We can take a break. That late. We can take a break to.
Because we're loading the pod and then we're physically leaving on Monday the 13th.
Yeah.
Well, next week is Rogue One, whether you can tune in or not. And
Not
then
fair.
it'll be a nice break from loading your pod. I don't know. But, Last Jedi in 2 weeks, Rogue One next week. Got 4 more sessions, and that's it. I'm excited.
Can we skip Last Jedi? Like, would that work?
It's so funny. For me, The Last Jedi, I really dislike the story, but from a visual perspective, it's like literally like the most gorgeous, artistically produced Star Wars film. It is such an incredible work of art, visually speaking. It's just the story I really don't like.
I have an appreciation for a part of it, which is because I really don't like Luke because I think he's majorly whiny. So I was happy that older Luke, while still a little whiny, is also become like a sarcastic, smartass. So I could appreciate that.
Yes. He has been. He definitely does. If I could also do a quick pitch for something totally different and yet fairly similar. So in a couple of weeks, I think I have the date in my mind, but I haven't done it yet. The reason I was thinking about Ben Sora Mora is because I've been thinking about doing having nothing to do with Star Wars, but a meat and wine discussion in the Talmud. So how the rabbis of the Talmud discuss whenever meat and wine are paired together. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it will be during the 9 days, and it is a time in which Jews typically refrain from consuming meat and wine. And I wanted to look at other instances. Now, obviously, it comes up with holidays, so it's a very happy occasion, but there's some others, Ben Sora Mora, which I've pretty much, there's still some others, but it's an interesting topic. So if you're interested, I'm happy to share more with you about that experiment, which might also involve beer in case anybody wants to buy a certain beer. But let me know. It'll be a fun experiment of drinking texts. So that's totally separate, has nothing to do with Star Wars, but it'll also be a Zoom and a trial experiment of sorts. Okay, so Rogue One next week, Last Jedi in 2 weeks. Thank you everybody for coming around and rolling on by. And anybody, I know it's corny, rabbis are corny. Any other questions, comments, questions, queries, concerns? Anybody have anything? We're good? All right, thank you everybody. Allison, Vera, Jason, Stevie, Edie, Stephanie, and Daryl, everybody, thank you so much, and may the force be with you.
Right.
Uh,
Bye.